Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. We got Dan Duggan of The Athletic on the program, wrapping up the Giants offseason program. Minicamp is over. All the OTAs are over. The next time you'll see these New York Giants will be training camp, and we will be there. So I'm excited for that. Justin, how are you doing?
Hey, Bobby Skinner.
The lockout has ended.
Yeah, first time that we've chatted in, I think, almost like 2 weeks on a podcast. You and you've been in España. I talked with Grump. You talked to the Anatena. I yacked. I got sick, and now we're here, and I have a beard. How do you like that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. So I think you're better clean cut, I'm the same way. Like I'm not a beard guy either, so it's not a judgmental way. I just think you're better
You
clean cut.
you and my mom hate the beard, and everybody at work loves the beard.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes right there.
It does. Honestly, it does.
But we got Dan Duggan on the show. And there is a topic that we're going to talk about after the show that like I got takes on, and me and Justin we got to talk about this whole hot dog controversy.
Yeah.
And not only it's before I just a little teaser into this. Like the hot dog contest has always been like a show joke back to like 2020.
Not a joke.
And now that it's so funny, Danny King like moves on, works the TMZ, and he's like he interviews the guy who's probably going to win the contest this year. So I retweeted that during the interview. But before we give it to Dan Duggan, Justin, this episode is brought to you by SeatGeek. Thanks so much to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode of Talking Giants. Baseball season is back, and SeatGeek is hooking us up with a new special offer. Everyone can use code GIANTS10 for 10% off any tickets on SeatGeek, whether you're a new customer or not, which is so huge because SeatGeek has been with us for a long time. They've been a huge part of our show. So I honestly think most of our listeners like have used, SeatGeek, the $20 off code. But now they get more money off. So it's I hope you guys are listening because they are honestly the lifeblood of this show. They present it. Without SeatGeek, we're dead. So we need you guys to support SeatGeek. Baseball season is officially here, and artists like Drake, Hozier, and Bad Bunny are on tour. I love that guy, Bad Bunny. You already know that SeatGeek is the best place to get tickets. No matter how many times you bought tickets using SeatGeek before, I've done it a lot. Giants 10 is going to get you 10% off next order. By the way, NBA Finals have been very disappointing. A Boston team's going to win. Let me ask you this. You know how much I hate Kyrie Irving.
Yes.
Is it bad that I was rooting for the Mavs to win because I love Jason Kidd so much and I think Luka Doncic is like the next like him in the NBA?
No, because I think in a way, when was Kyrie? Sorry, I just said the wrong name. When was Kyrie Irving traded from the Nets? Was that just last year? Or was that 2 years ago?
A year and a half. It was at the deadline.
I mean,
last year.
It feels like that Nets core. Like you could tell me, oh, that Nets core of Harden are Irving and Durant. You could have told me that
they're all losers. By the way, Kyrie is actually the best gamer out of them.
Yeah.
Like when it comes, like I actually like as much as I cannot stand Kyrie, I respect his game, and that's why I wanted him on the team no matter what, just because this is our only chance in the championship. The other two are just total losers, and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's gotten swept. He gets swept just every year. First round, we get swept out. Loser. James Harden, don't need to talk about how much of a loser he is. Good luck with those tainted, titles getting triggered online for the rest of your life, Kevin Durant. Kyrie, you suck. So part of me is happy the Celtics are beating Kyrie for an NBA championship because that's the fan base that hates him more than the Nets is the Celtics.
That is true.
No matter. So use Giants 10 to get 10% off your next order. So take out your phone, open the SeatGeek app, and add code Giants10 to your account. What are you waiting for? Do it now because the offer is only available for a limited time. Code Giants10 for 10% off your next order. You'll be glad you did. And here's Dan Duggan. All right, we're now welcome on Dan Duggan of The Athletic, wrapping up Giants offseason activities. 6 weeks off until training camp, which we were doing a little media scum bitching about, the possible new training camp beforehand. Missing out on these 6 weeks. But how you doing? How was these last couple of days at minicamp?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. Definitely looking forward to those 6 weeks off. But minicamp is really like less of a big deal. I feel like when I first came on the beat, it was 3 days, and they treated them almost like training camp practices, obviously with some modified rules. I think most coaches have gone to the 2-day method, and like I think it's funny. Some coaches, I think it was maybe Seattle's coach, did the old like, hey, we're canceling it, like so they can get like the good guy vibes from it. Whereas like, nobody really seems to do 3 days anymore. And so Daboll just dropped that pretense where it's only 2 days. And then even yesterday was super light. I mean, the second practice, they were on the field for like 58 minutes. They sat out guys that weren't hurt, like, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Andrew Thomas, Bobby Okereke. But then they also had a pretty long injury list, which I think contributed to it. I think if they did have so many guys, kind of banged up or on the side, maybe they would have gone a little harder. But it was really a one-day mini camp. It was like the first day, it was a real practice, but still, it's not quite this like big ramp up from OTAs, which I think it used to be a little bit more.
I want to start essentially with Darren Waller. And I had a thought that, like, imagine if that just happened randomly and that wasn't like leaked out, over months that he's retiring in the middle of June. But they had time to plan for this. And the all sense was that he would retire, and he did. Now, I don't expect them to use all $12 million of that money that they add, that cap space that they added. But could you see them, or like, do you see them using like a $4 to $5 million like contract for like a worthy player, once they get in the camp and get rolling?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I think there's sort of almost like a misnomer that like this was like found money. Like you said, they knew he was going to retire. And obviously free agents are kind of off the board by now for the most part. There's still guys out there we'll probably touch on. But if they wanted to sign someone for $10 million, like a 1 year, $10 million deal, they didn't have to wait for Darren Waller's official retirement that might have come off the books. They could have just restructured Andrew Thomas and know, hey, we're going to basically get reimbursed when we get the money back from Darren Waller. So I think the notion that they were like waiting for some moment to then have the money, then they can budget for this money, for months out. Because again, you're just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, what I think the Darren Waller money does is if they don't make a splash signing, they should possibly be able to just like get through the season without any restructures because you got to pay the practice squad. You're gonna have injury replacements. The top 51 rules go away. So guys on IR count, the 52 and 53 man, those two salaries get added. So all of that adds up, and I think fans don't usually think about that. That's say $5 million just when the top 51 goes away and the IR guys start counting. But they could probably get through 11 million, whatever it is now and change. That's probably enough to get through. So if they want to make a splash signing, they're probably still going to have to restructure guys anyway. So again, I just don't think Darren Waller retiring, it definitely helps, but it changes the outlook. So then to your question, do I think they'll spend it? Because they do have it. I'm not trying to totally diminish it. They did get more cap space than they had, a couple of days ago. I kind of think they will. At first, I was like, they're not. I don't think they're going to go. I'll just keep using Stephon Gilmore because, like, you just look at sort of the weakness on this roster. A guy who's out there who's probably going to command real money. I don't think they're going to give him like a 1 year, $10 million deal. I'd be surprised if they did that. Or Justin Simmons, another name fans throw out there. But I do think they'll probably make like a mid-range signing in the like 3, 4, 5 million, like above just like VSBs, like Trey Herndon. We don't know his contract details yet. I'm guessing that'll be a minimum contract with probably very little or no guarantee money. So those aren't like, that's not based off Darren Waller. That's based on the fact they had an open roster spot and they were able to get a veteran guy in here to try out. But yeah, I mean, I think when you look at what they've done at cornerback this offseason, like obviously not very much, but they kicked the tires on Tre'Davious White. They kicked the tires on Darius Williams. It just came out that Steven Nelson, who's retiring, apparently they kicked the tires on him. So all of those guys would have cost, $5 million plus. So the fact that they showed interest, I do get the sense that, there probably is a signing coming there. And again, like Gilmore's the name that comes to the top of the head. I think he's the best guy out there. I don't think he'd be available at that rate. So then you maybe start looking at that next tier, but I would not be surprised if there's like a middle class corner signing, a 1 year kind of stopgap guy.
Has all contact been lost with the Dore's representatives? Because it seems like the perfect fit, honestly. I mean, he has experience under Shane Bowen as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's funny when you're trying to describe like who that next tier is. He is that, but you mentioned the Shane Bowen experience. I don't know if that bodes well because I'm pretty sure when Bowen took over as DC is when they cut Adoree. He's on the 5th-year option. I don't remember the exact timeline there, but I think Bowen
declined. Sorry.
They picked up the option and then cut him before because that was before it wasn't guaranteed. But either way, like Shane Bowen was prominently involved in a time when Adoree Jackson was still like in the prime of his career, and they said, we don't want you anymore. And I think the ship has sailed here. I mean, you look at the way he played at the end of last season and just sort of the effort kind of stuff. I don't think that's what they want to kind of sign up for again. I don't think he left a great taste in their mouths. Like, I think he's a good guy and all that stuff, but sort of just from a kind of culture and leadership like fit, I don't know that he is one. So I mean, the fact that this is kind of silly sometimes.
Was that noticed within the building? Because I remember like I think it was the Rams game where I'm like, he's just avoiding contact, and then Puka had that touchdown afterward. Like, was that noticed within the building?
Yeah, no, I definitely kind of caught wind that the resistance to tackling, we'll call it, at times didn't sit well. I think some of the stuff can be a little silly. That like they haven't given, that they gave away number 22, but they did give that number away. They could have kind of held it if they thought there was a chance to be back. So I think pretty safe to say that he won't be back.
I think we're at the point of the offseason, besides like the big flashy names of Stephon Gilmore, maybe if you view Adoree Jackson as an upgrade to the secondary. I also think we're at the point of the offseason where it's possible that the next best significant opportunity for the Giants to really upgrade their team is the post 53-man cutdown days. And also the Giants are now at that opportunity what they were during the 2022 season. What made 2022 partially so good is that their pro personnel department was able to make moves because they're so high on that waiver claim. So I don't know, talk a little bit about that the Giants have that opportunity. And, even, myself and the Football Grump, we were having a show a couple weeks ago where we were talking about how like almost like the pro personnel department has been almost more impressive with some of the moves that they've made than like the scouting department and some of the things that they've done in the draft.
No, I think that's a good point, because you figure last year when they were like 25th on the waiver order, they had to do those trades for Isaiah Simmons and Boogie Basham. But again, I think it's a sign that they definitely look at like the roster construction period going right up, through cut day. Obviously, you make trades during the season even, but that's like a point for them where they're going to continue to really try to find guys that are expendable elsewhere. But like you said, they don't maybe have to make trades this year because they are 6th in the order. And I don't think that has much of a cap impact, because usually those guys are typically minimum salary type guys that are going to be available. But no, to your point, 2022, that was like you said, it was a big part of filling some gaps. And then you look at the fact that the starting secondary right now is Jason Pinnock, a guy who was claimed at that time, and Nick McLeod, a guy who's claimed at that time. So they weren't even just like short-term stopgaps. Like, I don't know if Fabian Moreau was a waiver claim or if they just signed. I think they signed to the practice squad initially.
He was cut by the Texans practice squad and then signed to the 53.
Yeah. But so he was like strictly a stopgap. Obviously, he played pretty well and played a lot that year, but like wasn't part of the future. But they've gotten guys like Pinnock and McLeod, who again were young players who they saw something. And now the fact that they're starting 3 years later shows that obviously the personnel department did a great job identifying them. So yeah, I think that's encouraging. I also think it's a tough thing to count on, though. You can't really live off other teams' scraps, So I think it was a great sign they did in 2022. I'm trying to think last year. I don't really recall as many hits because again, that's just a tough way to operate. But no, I think the fact that they're back up kind of at the top of the batting order is something to keep an eye on for sure.
It is crazy how many, like Tyree Phillips, Isaiah Hodge, like how many guys that they got off of that. So it's this Waller conversation is kind of, that might turn into a DB conversation. The other big topic of this time of the year is the offensive line. Evan Neal didn't compete in any of the 11-on-11 stuff that they did. Like, what is the thoughts on him within the building? Because I think everything points to him getting that shot to be the starting right tackle, but we've also seen them pull the plug quickly on guys like Golladay and Mark Lewinsky, one game into the season where they go from essentially full-time starters to now you're not playing for the rest of the year type of stuff.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fascinating. I think there's so many layers to this, but if you go back, that injury was so damaging on so many fronts last year, because at least if he got what he missed, like the last 8-9 games, if at least if you had that much more of a sample size, you would, I think, have more conviction. The fact that he got injured gives them sort of the out, but maybe not the out you want to have of like, well, we got to give him one more chance because he was hurt. Like if he had played and played well, you could feel confident. If he had played and continued to play poorly, you could say, all right, like it's been 2 years now of a sample size. This guy isn't going to, make it, obviously certainly not to what they thought when they picked him 7th overall. The fact that he has just not played that much, I think made them feel like, all right, we have to give him one more shot. But now you get into the spring, and listen, he had the surgery in January. There was never any, like, he's going to be ready for mini camp. There was never any declarations like that. But the concern for me is he had like the setbacks and the misdiagnosis last year. And so then we come to the spring and he's doing like individual drills, nothing 11 on 11, like you said, but he's like part of practice. Like he's doing individual drills, then he's standing there, he's stepping in, I think even in the, install, the walkthrough periods, just not doing the live action. But then all of a sudden, the last OTA we were at, last week, he's, totally scaled back, not really doing anything. And then even you come to this week where he's not even like part of the action. He's like in the building half the time, rehabbing, comes out like midway through practice, is over like riding the exercise bike. So, I mean, Brian Dable never says if a guy had a setback. It definitely feels like he must have had a setback because he's doing way less. I can't imagine that was like prescribed. Like, hey, we're going to push you a little bit and then just totally, peel you back. Usually, obviously, you want to be building when you're coming back from an injury. So, to me, that's still the first concern. Like, is he going to be fully ready and healthy? It's 6 weeks away, of course, but he just hasn't proven that he's been able to, and this injury seems to be lingering a little bit. And then, as far as your question about the leash, I mean, like Jermaine Eleanor is a better right tackle than Evan Neal.
Yes.
So you're weakening yourself basically at two spots here by having Jermaine Eleanor, who you spent money on based on what he did at right tackle. He did not play guard the last 2 years. He's never really played guard, or at least not at a high level or for a consistent amount of time. So you're putting him at guard. We have no idea if he's a good guard. We do know he could be a pretty good right tackle, but you're giving Evan Neal the first crack at it. Like it's like they're so kind of tied up in knots there. And then you talked to Eleanor yesterday, and he says like he just wants to focus on left guard because, again, he's going to go out and start there as of right now. So he wants to focus, obviously, on the position he's expecting, to play 1,000 snaps at this year. And, if he has to go to right tackle, I mean, I guess there's obviously muscle memory, but that's like a big ask. I mean, this is not an all-pro level player here. He like just got his footing as a quality NFL player at right tackle after bouncing around for every position for 5 years. So now you're asking him to switch positions again, but also we might need you to be the insurance policy at a vitally important position. Like that to me is putting so much on him. I mean, personally, I think
they're treating him like he's Tyron Smith.
Yeah, right. And I honestly, like, I think the best thing they have for the Giants, I'm not like wishing ill on Evan Neal or something, but somehow for them to just come to a conclusion, like within a week of camp, whether he's just too injured or he just like doesn't look like he can play, but I don't think you can come to that conclusion if he's healthy within a week of camp, but just like eliminate him from the process, put Illuminor at right tackle, and then worry about figuring out the guard spot. Because I just really think they have two variables now, because we don't know if Illuminor is a good left guard. I don't think Evan Neal is going to be a good right tackle. So I think at least if you could eliminate one of those variables by putting Illuminor at the position he's played well at, that'd be much better off. I just don't see how they get to that point unless Neal's injured, because you have to give him some time. If you're going to say he's going to get the first crack at being right, the right tackle, the pads don't even come on for a handful of practices. You got to at least let him get to the joint practices, the preseason games. So you're going to be pretty deep into camp before you can even pull the plug the way things are set up.
Yeah, I laugh because I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I've repeated most of those talking points too much this offseason, so it's a little refreshing to hear it from someone else.
And also, we need to get to a point where
Bakar Basso is going to save us.
Well, yeah. I think we need to get to the point where we are finally saying the sentence as people who cover the team and even as fans of the team. The best version of the Giants' offensive line is when Evan Neal is not in it. And I even think that's true just from the 2-year sample size that we've seen. Tyree Phillips is in there. And when then Evan Neal is hurt and when Andrew Thomas is healthy, and then you have another tackle coming in there. So, Dan, so you were even talking about how people in the building believe, oh man, we really needed that final 8-game sample size of 2023 because we know that Evan Neal didn't perform great. We know that the first, at least 1.5 years, and even he was hurt in 2022. We know that the first 1.5 years haven't been great. Do you think people in the building are just saying that as a reason to like, okay, well, we got to roll him out there and we got to see what we have? Or do you think secretly behind the scenes, people are like, I don't know, man. Like, I really think like Jermaine Elemunar, best version of the Giants offensive line, best right tackle we have on the team. Is that just like kind of speaking as an excuse, or do you think behind the scenes people kind of know the reality of it?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer. I'll start with that so I can preface it with that way. But I will say I've been around enough coaching staffs, enough front offices. They all do what this current regime is doing, which is basically lie to themselves or convince themselves that the best possible outcome is like likely or is what we should expect. Like you just see it over and over again where you give if he was not a top 10 draft pick, let's take that. Let's say Evan Neal was a 4th round pick where they put out right tackle and you played the last 2 seasons out.
Like
There's
Evan
not
Neal,
a chance
Joshua Ezeudu.
yeah, there's not a chance in hell he'd be showing up to day one of training camp as the unquestioned starting right tackle. So you have to, factor that in. There's biases there. It's a bad look for Joe Schoen if Evan Neal's like a backup entering year 3. So I definitely think that's part of the equation. Because again, we've seen it over and over and over again where coaching staffs and front offices do this, where they want to give their draft picks every chance to prove themselves. And then we on the outside look at like, I don't know if that's going to work. And then, I would say most times it doesn't. I mean, it's hard to say right now. Maybe finally the switch turns on and we look foolish for having this conversation about Evan Neal, in 6 months. There's nothing that I've seen to make me believe that is going to be the case. But I just think that's a lot of the time that's the way the teams look at these things with just like, it's very hard for them to accept that, again, Joe Schoen said he went back and watched his Alabama tape last year. What does that matter at this point? You have a ton of NFL tape to watch. So I think that they just really squint and want to see things from the best outlook, because listen, if Evan Neal turns it on this year and has like an Andrew Thomas, type of leap that everyone was talking about, maybe happening last offseason, obviously he didn't. If he has that type of leap, the Giants are going to be doing I told you so. It's all over the world. Like, yeah, everyone was down on this guy, blah, blah, blah. And then your Giants fans and everyone in the Giants world will be referencing for the next 50 years anytime a rookie has a bad season or bad first 2 seasons. Like, remember Evan Neal. So trust me, that'll be coming. But I just think the odds of hitting that inside straight are very low, but it feels like that's what they're playing to. And again, I just feel like I've seen it time and time again where the predictable outcome ends up happening.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where I get frustrated is the guard strategy more so than I obviously it's intertwined, but I love the Eleanor sign. I was like, this is great value for what this guy's done over the last 2 years. And it allows you to give Evan Neal a chance, but also like have a pretty financially savvy like backup plan with Jermaine Eleanor. But then when it's like, oh no, they're not getting a guard outside of John Runyon. It's going to be Jermaine Eleanor. And, you think, okay, well, Aaron Stinney's not good, but he has started a handful of games in the NFL. And then it's like, give Josh Ezeudu your 67th overall chance, a shot to win. Like, guards sometimes hit in year 3. There's a lot of time where, we talk about there not being that year 3 jump for tackles. But for guards, it seems like year 3 is a position year where they just will randomly hit. Like, you'll see guys who look like bust the first 2 years signing $20 million contracts a couple years later. What do you think about them working him essentially solely at offensive tackle? Because we saw him not play well there, and I'm not mad at Josh Ezeudu for not playing well at tackle, but like it seems like they just flat out given up on him ever being a guard.
Yeah, this is always a line conversation. It's a little distressing, I think, if you're like trying to be an optimistic.
I know, and I've been trying to not bring it up on like every week on the show, but it's really the main thing going into this season.
It's kind of like one of the main things on my brain, like as we've gone into post-draft and everything like that, and settling in with the excitement of the draft class, it's honestly been the main thing on my mind about this team.
Yeah, I mean, like as it should be, because it's like, it's become cliche at this point. If you follow the Giants, like, oh, this is the year the O-line's fixed. But it's like everyone just gets that Men in Black thing and forgets that they said it last year and then the line stunk. They said the year before and then the line stunk. Like, why does everyone assume? Put it this way, I mean, they're gonna have to prove it to me before I believe it. And so I'm not convinced that the line's gonna be better. And listen, one thing
I've also learned that new O-line coaches have more hype than first overall draft picks too.
For sure. And listen, the longer I've done this, the more I've come to realize like how little I know. Like when I came in on the beat, I was probably like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. Like, listen, they know so much more about football. They know so much more about evaluating their personnel. But at the same time, like there's some decisions, especially let's just go to last offseason they made, that in the moment, I was like, what are they doing? Like, why is Eric Gray punt returning? Why are they doing this weird guard rotation where every single snap guys are rotating? Why did they cut Tyree Phillips? All these moves that like in the moment seemed questionable. And then obviously in hindsight, I was validated. So not saying that gives me confidence to question everything they do, but it does eliminate me just giving the benefit of the doubt on everything, particularly when it comes to O-line. So to the Ezeudu point, I don't get how we've gotten here. Like they drafted him, unless at the time I know like the flexibility was an appealing thing. He had played guard, he had played tackle, he had done that. but they viewed him as a guard. Like that first,
Yeah, that felt more like a nice fact than a actual like reason to use. Like they had Andrew Thomas, and they just draft. Like there was no vision for him actually playing tackle at the draft pick for me.
Exactly. So it was like he's coming in as a rookie. Like you said, we have our two tackles in Neal and Thomas, and if someone gets hurt and we need to bump him out there, he can do it. But he was working as guard. I'm pretty sure mostly that first offseason, certainly during the season. Last offseason, exclusively played guard, and then of course gets switched to tackle like in live action, which was a disaster predictably. So I thought maybe they're giving him some tackle reps early in the spring just so they don't put him in that position again. If the worst case scenario happens, he hasn't had 0 reps at tackle. But no, he's only worked at tackle. Like individual drills, when the tackles go separate, he's always with the tackles. He's never with the guards. And Dable said, and again, it's so hard with O-line with this whole versatility thing. You need to, if you're not that good, you need to focus on the position to be really good at first. I think there's certain veterans who have that swing capability. But if I understand, if you want Josh Ezeudu to help your team, he needs to focus on one position. So that they've chosen tackle, which surprises me. But that I understand at least the idea there. Like I don't need him playing half the spring a guard, half the spring a tackle. Like he needs to at least find a spot where you feel comfortable. It's just surprising to me that tackle is the spot that they've landed on.
Yeah, for a team that has, at least you can make an argument that there are 3 starting tackles on the team with Elamoon or Neal, who, at worst can be the swing tackle, or at least the backup right tackle, and then Elamoon can move to left, whatever, right? You can argue that they have 3 tackles on the team. Do they have 3 guards on the team? No, I don't think they have 3 guards on the team. You're moving Ezeudu away from guard already. So he hasn't even been he hasn't even been playing guard at all with like second team or third team, nothing.
No, I haven't seen him take a single, certainly on team periods, but I don't even think in positional stuff. Because again, a lot of times they'll be all 5 together and then they separate, like the centers and guards and tackles will all kind of go their own spot. And he's been with the tackles every practice from what I've seen.
All right, Bobby, do you want to switch to more optimistic and fun stuff?
Yeah, I know. It's just the offensive line is like always. It's like Jen said, it's been in the forefront of like anytime I think about like big picture stuff. Like this is like I can't wrap my head around it yet.
All right, here's a quick.
Yeah, hit us with something good.
I'm gonna give a layup question because we don't even have it down on the document, but it's like probably the most important thing that Giants fans want to hear from right now.
What do you think about Daniel? No, Daniel Jones questions.
First of all, Dan, I lasted longer than Daniel Jones with the beard.
If we're calling it that.
Whoa, hey, take it easy. Second of all, talk to me about how fun Malik Nabers is.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, they gotta cleanse the palate after that. Depressing.
He's the one person after last year's of training camp hype that we're allowed to just be hyped for no matter what. Like we can be as exaggerative as we want to be.
Yeah, no, listen, he looked awesome. I think even when you first saw him in person, because I think he looks bigger than his measurements. I think he's like 200 pounds, but he's like a built dude. Especially you see him. There was that, obviously that celebration with him and Hyatt and Wandale. And obviously those are very small guys, but he just looks like so much bigger when you compare him to those guys, or even guys like Slayton, who's kind of, wiry. Like Nabers is built. And there was the practice, I think it was the last open OTA last week where he had the deep ball over flop where he just made a great catch and it looked easy. And then he had a really great catch where I don't know why the Giants didn't post it, and the cameraman must have been asleep on the job. But he came across the field as Locke broke the pocket, and just kind of threw it up to him, and he made this acrobatic leaping catch. I think you drafted a wide receiver 6 overall, you expect he's gonna have kind of a wow factor, and this kid certainly has lived up to it. It's funny now we're getting back to the Odell days where we have to video him in warm-ups making one-handed catches, which every receiver.
Yeah.
Chase Cota can do that too. So I can't get myself to get hyped about that, but I will say he makes it look particularly easy. He is so fluid. But I just can't bring myself to do the whole one-handed catch clickbait routine again. It's just it's cool. Every NFL receiver can do it. But much more importantly, between the lines, he's been really good. And it's the variety of things. It's not just the deep balls. A lot of just curl routes and stuff like that. In traffic, he's He hasn't had a drop that I've noticed. Just really solid. And a guy who, like, when you look at how quickly rookie receivers can make impact, I would be shocked if he's not a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't care what like the state of the offense is. Like, he's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to get the targets. And even on bad offenses, guys go for 1,000 yards. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't have like the best receiving season, since Odell.
And despite the offensive line and, the issues that we spent a lot of time on, and, I think the stock on Daniel Jones is as low as it's ever been. Like, you do get somewhat excited about the wide receiver room because of like the domino effect of like, okay, now you have a 1. Slayton doesn't have to be the number 2. Now you have Jalen Hyatt. Guess what? He's not going to always be, someone's got to have the single coverage. And then, more space for Wandale. Obviously losing Waller hurts, a good bit for the receiving game, but it's just, that's why, I'm excited. Like, I have like a little sliver of excitement for the offense because of, maybe having one of those game-changing guys and Nabers, hopefully.
I have something on Burns, two superstars, hopefully.
Which has honestly been it feels like you forget that like they made a great, a big blockbuster move in trading for Burns.
Yeah, because edge rushers, and this isn't the time for them. I mean, the first like OTA, he just like destroyed Joshua Ezeudu, and it was like, all right, kind of we've seen enough here. But I mean, it's hard, for the offensive line. It's hard because you can't get your hands on them. Hard, obviously, for pass rushers, so they don't actually get sacks. They have to do the thing where they like celebrate just to let everyone know they had a sack. But he's another guy he's been great from everything I've heard and seen. Like you don't know much about guys who are playing in Carolina, but even the limited interactions we've had with him, he has like a leadership vibe to him. Seems like a really kind of just good guy, thoughtful guy. Again, you never know what you're getting when you bring a guy in, and it seems like. I know he's a captain in Carolina. It seems like he's going to kind of easily step into a sort of a leadership role here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the whole leadership portion because he's talked about, the role that Hassan Reddick played on him. And something that Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't had in his 2 years is an edge rusher that can look him in the eye and say, you know what? I've been around here longer than you, but you know what? I'm also better than you. So, you kind of can learn from me and listen to me. Jihad Ward, a leader of the edge rusher room the last 2 years with his 10 career sacks, whatever. So may not even been 10, Bobby. I like that. And it seems like Burns is rubbing off on him well. Bobby, can I get to some practice format stuff, or do you have anything like offensively?
No, hit it. Yeah.
So, we'll start off with this. There's been reports and, I've seen some tweets about how practices are formatted differently from last spring. There's been way more 11-on-11s and stuff like that. Daniel Jones didn't like how much 11-on-11s there was at certain points. So basically give us kind of a summary of how our practices formatted from last spring to this spring. Do you think that there's a chance that could carry to camp a little bit higher intensity? And do you think that has anything to do with a more younger, more youthful roster this year?
So the biggest change is one you touched on, because I noticed it right out of the gates where I went back to my notes. They literally did not do any 11-on-11 last spring. Not like, oh, they mixed it in. Because I think the first year they did a mix. Like it was some 7-on-7, but usually, if you're a training camp, usually there's like a period of 7-on-7 and then like 4 periods of 11-on-11. Last offseason, it was all 7-on-7. So it kind of contributed to that country club vibe that a lot of us kind of hammered him for as the camp progressed. And so, it was a noticeable difference that this spring, they really didn't do 7-on-7 by choice. The only reason they did 7-on-7 was to give Daniel Jones a handful of reps every day because he wasn't doing 11-on-11. So understandable, they wanted to at least give him some live action. But that was the only, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Nathan Rourke did not do any 7-on-7. That was strictly for Daniel Jones' benefit. And then there was a ton of 11-on-11. Like you said, every period otherwise was 11-on-11. And, Dable explained it. Because, okay, there's no, you can't hit the quarterbacks, but I do think there's at least a benefit to having to feel the pass rush. Because, again, like I said, like Brian Burns, you could tell he was getting a lot of pressure that one practice, but the quarterback's back there, he has to at least feel it, move around. I think when you look at how bad the O-line was last year and also how bad Daniel Jones was navigating the pocket and also Tommy DeVito when he came in, I think the more reps you can get of having Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence in your face and having to react to that is beneficial. So I think that was kind of an obvious change. And yeah, to your point, like, is that going to signal a more intense training camp? I'm skeptical on that. We'll see, because they do still seem like they're very much, that's like a football decision. They do seem very much adherent to the sports science kind of approach where, again, a lot of guys didn't participate this spring. And again, it's the spring. I don't blame them. You're not going to like push guys in April that have maybe had a surgery in the fall or even after the season. But like, let's just see if it's the same deal when we get to August, when it's like time to really start getting out of the grind and working day after day to improve. So that is something I'll be curious to see if they don't do as many kind of vet days, and if they practice, more in pads than they did last year. They even scaled back how many padded practices they had last year compared to 2022. So then your point being a younger team, I think Dable definitely, he runs a player-friendly program, so I think a lot of the vets appreciated, like, oh, we're not in pads 2 days in a row. They do have a young team now. Like, hey, Theo Johnson, you got to work on your blocking. You got to have to wear the pads to do that. So, like, let's have a few more padded practices and let guys like that kind of battle. I'm trying to think other changes practice-wise. Like,
even year one was a lot more intense as far as camp as year. It wasn't the most intense camp ever, but like it was like noticeable. They were actually running the ball. They had padded practice the first opportunity they got. So
some of the changes, I'm trying to think, like special teams. I know this is a sweet.
Oh yeah.
I was going to ask that because I already forgot his name. He's so well respected.
Thomas McGahee.
Oh, Thomas McGahee. Like those were, I was like, what are they even doing? What are they even practicing besides catching punts from the jug? Have those been more intense? Because that's actually something I'm really interested in.
Then we went to the Lions, and it was like, I was like paying.
Oh, it was full contact.
I was paying attention to special teams practices where for years, and this is even going back to Tom Quinn. When Tom Quinn was running things here, I would never pay attention to special teams practices and portions, watching Giants practices. But when I was in Detroit, I was locked in because I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, those were like gunner drills they were doing in Detroit. It was like fights on like every play because the guys just beating the crap out of
pads.
So I mean, we'll see, because again, they don't have the pads on, so it wasn't like super physical. Obviously, it can't be. But the one thing I did notice that was different, and I don't know if it's better or worse. I mean, when they do like say kick return or punt return, whatever, it wasn't necessarily all 11 going on the field at once. Like it would almost be like the interior guys, let's say, would be in one section of the field, and like the gunners and the jammers or the vices, whatever you call them, would be on the other field, or the other side of the field. So like it was very almost like segmented, which I'm sure is a heavy emphasis on, the fundamentals, especially with the kickoff rules changing. So I think that, again, I don't know if that would have changed under McGahee. Like it's still the same practice, still format the same. I don't think they did more special teams. Like what they did in the periods was definitely a little different. I mean, every coach has their own like spin on things. Like it was funny on the second mini camp practice, all of a sudden tennis balls came back for the first time since the Joe Judge days. They did this little weird drill where the punt returners were fielding punts, and they would throw the tennis ball up in the air when they got to like the spot they were trying to field the punt, and then they would catch the ball. And from my understanding is that was, you basically want the tennis ball to land basically where your feet are to show that you got to the right spot. Like these coaches have way too much time in their hands to come up with this stuff. But so again, like they're going to do different drills like that. But yeah, I've just noticed like it was a little harder almost. I like to track the personnel, and it was almost a little harder because it wasn't like the two starting gunners out there with the punt team, because there'd be like 12 gunners all just rotating on a kind of a separate field or on a separate part of the field. So personal frustration, not knowing who's wearing the pecking order, but also definitely, I think, just more individualized focus on like what each, kind of position group, if you want to call it that, on special teams has to do on a given play.
Yeah, I have no idea what you said that tennis ball drill does. Someone
explained.
Justin did a podcast with tennis balls taped to our hands in the Joe Judge days.
The good old days of those,
you saw mine and Justin's eyes light up when you said special teams, because it looked like they weren't even practicing. It was like just catching punts under Thomas McGahee, where it's like you don't need, like, yeah, it's not going to be the thing you pay attention to most, but it's like just tune out like this next 20 minutes.
How does the new
catch up on Twitter and
literally, I would, Dan, no shit, I would call special teams parade. All right, let's go on Twitter and scroll on Twitter and catch up. That's exactly what I would call it. Any observations, thoughts on new kickoff stuff? New kickoff.
That's hard to. I mean, they're still getting a handle on that. I mean, like again, that's another spot where it's just so weird to look at too. So you're not even 100% sure, like sort of what they're doing at certain points. Again, like that was one where I think yesterday they were kind of broken off into different groups and working on very specific parts of the blocking. But that stuff obviously has been talked a lot about this spring. I don't think we'll really get a great feel for it until you get to the preseason games and see it live, because it just looks so odd with, the guys being lined up way down the field. And the biggest difference, everyone knows right away, besides the alignment of, the 9 guys or whatever it is from the return team, is that they have 2 returners back. And Gabriel made a kind of obvious but good point. Like, under the old method, like, hang time was a valuable thing. And you remember Graham Gano was so good at those kind of like almost like pooch kickoffs that we'd have to get fielded like the 3-yard line. There's no value to that anymore because no one can move until the ball is fielded. So now guys can kick almost more like line drives. So you want to have 2 kickers there, 2 returners there, obviously, just to not have to cover the whole field when the ball isn't going to be kicked as high. So that was just like a very minor detail. But no, like, listen, it's funny. Gabriel's done 2 press conferences, and like 95% of the questions are about the kickoff rules, which is understandable. But I feel like I don't know much about anything else because that's just what we're just hammering on because it's new and it's different. It's kind of interesting. So I'm looking forward to like getting a little bit into the preseason at least, and we've seen it, so we can kind of like ask about other factors of special teams. But yeah, I think that'll be sort of a point of interest. But like, it's going to be fascinating to see just kind of how it works out when the games start.
I haven't watched the most recent presser with him. Since he was with the Jets, did you ask him about the effect on losing the racetrack had on kicking?
It's a good question.
Or catching kicks or whatever?
I didn't come up, although he did some. It was funny. He got asked in his first presser something about being familiar with the wind or whatever it was, because that's the deal with that area. And he kind of was like, "Oh, I don't want to get too much into that," like as if it was like a competitive advantage. So I mean, as much as you made fun of T-Mac, these guys are nuts. If you think about it, if your entire job was based on like a handful of plays, every game, like, you're gonna overthink everything, obsess over
nuts. It's crazy.
Thomas McGahee's family actually really liked this because we would just, every time something bad happened, we would just like so much respect for this guy. So they would like find us tweeting about how much we respect Thomas McGahee.
They didn't really get it.
I have one big picture question, Justin, that I want to finish off with. Big question. What do you sense where ownership is with this regime of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll? Because last year you had the playoff year one, everything's perfect, and last year wasn't just a normal lose some games. I mean, there was drama within the building, and the big contract for Daniel Jones went south quick. You lose 2 of your 2 best free agents. Like, what is the sense within the building as how ownership feels with them?
Oh, that's big picture you're going here. Yeah, I mean, the last time, ownership, and really that's just John Mara at this point, Tish hasn't talked in a few years, spoke at the owners' meeting. So things weren't fully settled at that point because obviously a lot of those questions at that point were about the potential of drafting a quarterback. I always, it's tough to wade too far into this territory because people have a lot of preconceived notions. Like the fact that they didn't draft a quarterback, I don't think that was any sort of mandate from John Mara. But I also think, knowing his affection for Daniel Jones, he's probably not upset that he does get another chance. Because again, I think he, it definitely is a big Daniel Jones believer and supporter. But about this regime overall, I believe him when he says that like he has full confidence in these guys. And again, it's like you only have to go back 2 years to see what a phenomenal job Brian Daboll did. Joe Schoen to me is the guy who's funny. Like if you're doing like approval ratings, I think his are more disproportionate to what he's done. Whereas I think Brian Daboll, like, there's probably more fans who maybe got turned off by him last year. But like, when you look at the 2022 success, like we were talking about the pro personnel department, but like point to who had a bigger hand in that, the guy who was coaching the crap out of a roster that was really deficient, or the guy who, listen, I'm not saying it's Joe Schoen's fault that the roster was deficient, but again, like, it wasn't like, oh my God, he came in and crushed the draft that year and had a bunch of great signings. He just, he kind of had to make do with what they had. And again, did a good job with some of those fringe pickups. But the Daboll, really excelled and got the trophy to prove it that first year. And then last year, of course, it was kind of disaster. But I'm still kind of waiting for like Joe Schoen to fully have his imprint on success with this team. And again, I just feel like that doesn't really ever get kind of mentioned. And maybe Malik Nabers is that guy. But I mean, he's had a bunch of draft picks. He's had 2 top 10 picks right away. Like, none of these guys have been Pro Bowlers. I know there's a lot of excitement about guys like Wandale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, but like, it's time for those guys to like be more than just like excited, pieces of excitement. They need to actually deliver. I mean, you can be a second, a third year receiver and have 1,000 yards or have a breakout season. So I think it's time for some of Joe Schoen's kind of investments to really come to the forefront. When you think about it, like, this season completely hinges on basically the 2022 and 23 draft picks. They have so many of those guys in starting lineups, obviously to a lesser extent, the picks this year, but you're always going to give rookies a bit of a break. But there's a lot of guys here, Evan Neal and Cordell Flott, and if it's Dane Belton or Tyler Newman, like there's a lot of guys that they've drafted that are in starting roles that haven't really shown a lot yet. And basically how the season goes will be dependent on what those guys show this year. But I do think ownership, again, talking to the stuff we were talking about earlier, but being like always kind of almost overly optimistic, I definitely think that's how they operate. I'm sure if you ask John Mara today, he's going to look at the bright side and probably see like, oh no, like we got the pieces in place. I think Joe Schoen does a really good job. A lot of with like the administrative stuff. So I'm sure John Mara likes and respects him for that. But we also know John Mara can be emotional when the games start. And if it's another bad season, I think everything's on the table. It'd be hard for me to see Joe Schoen only getting 3 years on the heels of Dave Gettleman getting 4. But again, I think everything is on the table if they have a disastrous season. And of course, if they have a successful season, then they're going to be elated. They're going to say, oh, finally, we found the right duo. And this is going to be, they're both relatively young guys. They could be here forever. But so, obviously, there's a wide range there of where this could go based on how the season unfolds.
Absolutely. Justin, nothing else?
Well, Dan Duggan, the next time you'll see us, we'll first of all, you'll be on the hot field and we'll be in the shade. So, haha. And then you'll see us in a black van.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, as always. Anything you got coming down the pipe as we get the time on the Athletic?
Yeah, like the next week or so, it's kind of like unpacking sort of everything from the off-season program and stuff. Like I'll have something on Friday morning dropping like sort of my big picture takeaways.
Perfect.
Some of the stuff we talked about here, some of the different stuff. I definitely have something probably coming next week. As you can see, I have strong feelings about the state of the offensive line. I'll definitely dive into that too. So those are 2 things to look for in the next week or so.
Sounds good. We'll be looking forward to reading them. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you to Dan Duggan at The Athletic for coming on the show. Excited to talk to him again in a couple weeks. Man, I really am excited for camp. I don't care if the vibes around this team aren't that good. The vibes around camp are going to always be fun and always be good. And you know what? The Giants are going to be better this year. And you want to know what's great? Even better than the Giants. Hope they're better than the Giants because it's Mando. Do you hate foul balls? You know the kind. Anthony Rizzo knows about some foul balls. No matter how hard you scrub them in the shower, they still smell. Well, ditch the soap. Step up to the plate with Mando whole body deodorant developed by a doctor. This game-changing formula is safe for your entire body and knocks out odor like a champ. Fun fact, even before Mando was sponsoring Talking Giants, my mother got me Mando because she's like, you freaking stink, you boy. Here's some Mando to help you out. And guess what? It's made with mandelic acid, which picks off odor at the source, keeping you fresh up for 72 hours. Woo. Thank God I need it. Whole body deodorant. It's clinically proven to control odor and better than a shower with soap. I could confirm. And Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes and free shipping. And the best part, I have Mando in my backpack everywhere I go. I have a little bit of a starter kit. If I need it on the, I'm at the warehouse today, I'm sweating. If I need it in a pinch, Mando's got me. And luckily I have a discount code to help you get hooked up on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% of your starter pack. Use code GIANTS at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com.
I have a great PG-13 slogan for Mando.
Be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did.
What is it?
Get Mando for your man, ho.
That is good.
That's a good slogan.
That is good.
With respect, obviously. It's obviously in jest.
Yeah.
It's a cheese day, as they would say where I am now.
Respectful. You want to give a little background as to why the Nathan's hot dog eating contest?
Yeah, this is very important to us. One, it's just like
2020.
Let's just say this. The hot dog contest is a big part of American culture. It's the 4th of July. Even like Kobayashi, when he was before Joey Chestnut came along, was like everyone knew who Kobayashi was. No one didn't know who Kobayashi was, right? And at that time, it's in the early 2000s, we didn't have, social media and all that. So we just watched everything that was on ESPN or ESPN2. Like if you were sports, so you saw all these wild sports, right? You had lesser sports be more popular. So you saw all this random shit. You watch the outdoors games, of guys, with running on logs and water and stuff. So the hot dog contest in itself is big. Um, and our 4th of July mail, I don't know how it happened, but we had our most viral clip on Talking Giants was of the hot dog contest when I was explaining to you guys what Glizzy was when Glizzy first,
Yeah,
became popular.
I had no clue.
And like I remember arguing with people online because they're like, because I was like, we did it, we got Glizzy on it, like because it was a Talking Giants joke, and people from Maryland, or the DMV, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, are like, no, it started here, and we're arguing like, no, Talking Giants created this. So it became a thing with the and it's just our 4th of July, and then for some reason you just started eating hot dogs every day at camp, so that became a big thing.
Well, I mean, I'll give the quick background behind that, because the Giants, certain people that work for the Giants started to be like, stop filming practices. So as a way to protest not a way to protest, but just as a way, well, I need to do some kind of content. I just started filming myself eating hot dogs at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's been a thing that I've done for the last 2 years at training camp. I do it every morning.
Yeah. And it's just and I was almost in the lemonade chugging contest 2 years ago.
This is true.
Remember? Like I got randomly picked to be in the lemonade chugging I didn't go because it would cost me way too much money, and the company rightfully wasn't going to pay for it. But I did have an idea of just going in there and just dumping the lemonade all over myself just to go get some attention out of it. Eventually, you need to get into the contest, and I will be your hype man. Like I'm so excited for that day. Maybe that's this year because they need some eyeballs. We get Justin into the hot dog contest. Like maybe we should start working some back channels to get you into that contest. But anyways, Joey Chestnut banned from the 4th of July hot dog contest. And people who are just normal people who aren't me that know, like, have watched that, that the 30 for 30 on this are saying like, how could they do this? I don't know what to think of this because now they have the Netflix that they're going to do on Labor Day, right? So Labor Day, they're going to have a live between him and Kobayashi, right? If you go back and watch the 30 for 30, it's about Chestnut versus Kobayashi coming onto the scene and then Chestnut taking it down. And there's it's like the cool thing to do to be like, oh, free Kobayashi. But Kobayashi essentially quit because he was losing. He was a sore loser about it. So it'll be interesting to see them back. And the competitive eating is like, you're not going to make a ton of money unless you're the best. So which means they can't like pay these people like a ton of money. But Chestnut makes a good amount of money. But they're not getting like NFL, like they're not as famous as you think they are.
But Netflix,
so like well, yeah, for that the Netflix one's going to do a crazy numbers, but like for George Shea who runs the contest and all that, like you have to be exclusive with them, right? Like there's other guys who have, there was one who beat Joey Chestnut. His name was Matt Stoney, and he stopped doing the contest because he was making more money doing his YouTube videos and being sponsored and stuff on that. So it's like it does suck, but it's the reality of it. But I'm not convinced, Justin, because they keep on saying he's joined a plant-based like hot dog company or, food company as a sponsorship, which is against the rules, which again, Joey Chestnut's the one who did this, not the hot dog contest. But the brand has not been named. So I'm not sure that that's even 100% true. And I think I don't know. To me, I got my antennas up, Justin. Because I think there's something going on. I think Chestnut ends up showing up to Coney Island on July 4th.
I think that there's like an Undertaker, like do 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 do, like WWE, like do 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 do.
And here's the thing: is the hot dog contest said that they allow before they knew about this. We knew about this Netflix thing. They mentioned like that we were going to allow him to compete in a Labor Day contest before we knew what it was, and now we know that it was. And I'm surprised that they would even let that happen without them getting a piece of it, huh?
The Netflix thing?
Yeah, the Nathan's people, George Shea's, like they came out with statements.
Netflix can just do what they want, though. That's the thing.
But I'm saying they let them do that, right? So they were going to let him do that and do the hot dog contest as well. But I don't know. But my part of me as a fan of the game kind of wants Like it'd be nice for a guy to just get a win in, instead of it being the Joey Chestnut show, and then maybe he comes back. But even though we're getting Kobayashi versus Chestnut, it's not going to be the same as it being on 4th of July in Coney Island.
Okay, but what is going to be more? This is you can't take the 4th of July out of it. But I almost think that there's going to be more hype for the Labor Day weekend event because of the stars that are in it, the 2 stars that are in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because anyone who
just,
watches the 4th of July thing has been wanting this for 15 years since Kobayashi dipped out on it.
You're watching it on 4th of July because of tradition, not because, and it's the sport, not because it's, oh my God, it's let me go see Joey Chestnut.
Well, hopefully, the hope was that someone else would take down Joey Chestnut eventually and become the new king for the next 10 years or so ever. But that's not what's happening. Like Chestnut, like it was just as popular with Kobayashi. It might have been more popular when Kobayashi was doing it, and then Chestnut came out of nowhere. And Kobayashi would like dominate. It used to be like for fun. I know way too much about this because I watched the 30 for 30 a couple times, which I think it's worth watching. But we need to get you in there. And then, hey, go read the tweet I just quote tweeted of Danny King. Danny King interviewed the guy who's probably going to win the contest this year, Jeffrey Esper, which is like just great full circle.
That also sounds way too similar to another name.
I know. It does. It sounds very familiar to that name. But he's very different. He's like, he wears like an old rugged hat. He's kind of a down to earth guy. And
very good.
As far as we know, no serious allegations.
Yeah, no flying to islands. So that's great.
Well, maybe he's been to an island before.
Yeah, maybe he does fly to islands.
Probably doesn't own his own island.
Probably doesn't own his own island. Yeah.
Until he wins, and then he's gonna have the money to do whatever he wants.
Right.
But we have to get you, like, even before all this happened, like, we need to get you in this contest. And I'm sure there's so many like 40,000 follower people in the world who are like, I'd love to be in the contest one year. But like, I feel like you, out of all of them, deserve, because you've done like, hey, I eat the hot dogs for breakfast at training camp every year. It's been a joke on the show for years. Like, we can make a great pitch to it. Like, we can just come with the receipts. Like, look at all the tweets of this guy eating a hot dog.
It's true. It's true. I even documented my whole buying process last year.
Did you see the wedding that I was at? They had a hot dog machine at like 4 a.m. They were serving people hot dogs, and as they played like dance music.
That's my time, by the way. Like, that's my four early in the morning. It's after 11 a.m. that the hot dogs just they get different. I need it before 11 a.m. That's when.
Also in Spain, do you know what they have on the international food aisle?
No.
Hot dogs.
Wow, it's great.
Yeah, so that's an international food here. I made the joke on Instagram. Like, why do they have an international food out in an international country? That don't make no sense. Because you're either American or foreign to me. And that's why we love the hot dog contest. So
that's an interview.
Are you rooting for Joey Chestnut or Kobayashi?
Joey Chestnut.
I'm rooting for Chestnut's gonna win. Kobayashi's washed. I'm rooting for Kobayashi so it can light the fire that, like, okay, you got to go back. Like, it would make it happen. Actually, I don't know, because if Kobayashi won, he would just be like, I'm not doing this again. I'm going down as the winner because I know I probably won't win again. But I don't know what I'm rooting for. I guess I'll just side with America and go Chestnut. But I do have a space in my heart for Kobayashi. I follow both of them on Instagram, so I knew about this news before everyone else because they posted it together. All right, we appreciate you guys. We will see you next week. Until then, let's go Big Blue.